Skip, you remember last week we had this very same discussion, and I said I believe it was 60-40 that the Raptors had the inside track to sign Kawhi for the simple fact, Skip, we hear a lot of these players says, I want to go somewhere where I can compete for a title. Well, hell, Kawhi doesn't have to compete. He won the title with this very team. Everyone comes back. Everyone is under contract with the exception of Denny Green. We all believe that Marc Gasol will pick up his player option and stay at least one more year. If Kawhi wanted to, he could do a 1-1, stay 1 year with a player option for a second year. He could do a 2-1. Then, Skip, if once he becomes a 10-year vet, he is entitled to 35% of whatever the cap is. So for me, knowing what he's been able to establish in Toronto, the trust that he's been able to build between the organization, the training staff, and the players, I think the known versus the unknown of going to the Clippers. Now, we all understand what Jerry West represents. He's as good as it gets as far as building a team into championship caliber. But the Toronto Raptors have something that the Clippers do not have. They have a year head start of working on Kawhi, giving Kawhi what he wants. Because this is what we know. Kawhi, you don't want to play back-to-back? No problem. If you need, another 10, 15, 20 games, load management, no problem. I think it's reported, Skip. It's not reported, it's fact. He missed 73 games in San Antonio his last year. He missed another 22. So in the past 2 years, he's missed 95 total games. Now, I don't believe he'll miss half that many games coming the next 2 years, but there's a very good chance he's going to miss moving forward probably somewhere between 10 and 20 games a season because of load management. The Raptors understand that. They have enough trust in Kawhi. He's built up enough respect with the organization, with the training staff. When he goes to them and says, I'm not feeling it tonight, I don't feel 100%, they're going to say, no problem. They're not going to look at him with a side eye. They're not going to, as you said, put him on the hot seat, have the play. Are you with us, Kawhi, or are you against us? Kawhi has built up something very, very good in Toronto. For me, I believe it was 60-40 last week. It might be trending towards 70-30. Who knows, maybe even 75-25. And Skip, he signed that big old deal. The same company that gave Drake that big 767, that jumbo business Boeing jet, they just signed Kawhi. I don't know why you would sign a guy a long-term deal in a different country if he ain't going to be in that country.
So, are you finished?
Yeah, okay. I'm finished.
So, I want to get this straight because I just heard a Hall of Fame Denver Bronco applauding this man for load management, applauding this man for being babied for months on end in San Antonio and in Toronto, 73 and 22 games that he missed because both teams just kept saying, here, more, you need more games? Here, take more games off. You can't play back-to-back? Here. So a guy I'm looking at right now through this big-headed monitor that I have to stare at with your big head in it. This guy who's in the Hall of Fame, who's in Denver today for all the right reasons because he played for a great owner and he gave it all. He gave up body and soul for the Broncos, right?
Yes.
You played hurt probably just like every game you played with some kind of injury somehow. You got this injection for that and this injection for that, and half of it you just had to say, I'm going to tough it out today. So now we're applauding this man, and this man you kept giving the excuse all through the conference finals and into the NBA finals saying, he's hurt. It's a big concern for the Raptors because he's hurt. And I kept saying, how? Why? What's hurt? Well, he's still got that thigh thing going. I don't know what it is because the Spurs couldn't figure out what it was. But he still had it going this year in Toronto, which led to, quote-unquote, overcompensation, which led to left knee. It went from right quad to left knee something, tendinitis. I don't know what it was. Tendinosis of his knee. He probably has a new condition that he invented. But the point is, you kept telling me how big a deal his injury was going into the finals, and now it's not even a narrative as he comes into free agency as the primo domino. He's number one. Where he falls, everybody else is going to fall after number two. So help me out here. Why is his injury condition not a factor here? Because obviously he's now the toast of New York and the toast of L.A. Both New York teams want him, both L.A. teams want him, but nobody's talking about he's perpetually hurt. Usually that would be the narrative for any other player we ever discuss on this show, right?
No, that would probably be the narrative in any other sport, but not in basketball, because we see teams lining up to give Kevin Durant, who has a ruptured Achilles, a max deal. We see teams lining up to offer Klay Thompson, who has a torn ACL, a max deal. So what we're starting to see, Skip, in basketball, when you have one of these players that can swing the pendulum of power, and that's what Kawhi Leonard can do, and that's what he did for the Toronto Raptors, you're willing to forego that. Yeah, he had some injuries. Yeah, he missed 73 games in 2018. Yes, he missed another 22 games in 2018, 2019 for load management. We get all of that. Because he's he's a top 3 player. He's one of these players that you can build your franchise around, and you have an opportunity to compete for the very not only now, but for the very near future for titles. So they're willing to forego that, because we see 2 of the top 5 free agents have catastrophic injuries, and teams are lining up to offer them max contracts. So at least Kawhi Leonard says, yes, I had some injuries. I had tendonitis from overcompensating in my right leg, my right quad. But I'm healthy. I finished the season standing, and I won a title. Skip, he's one of the de facto dominoes. He and KD are the 2 biggest fish that are out there, and everybody's going to line up to sign those guys, even though one guy is not going to play all of next year, and the other guy missed 95 games over the previous 2 seasons.
Okay, but the big difference between number 2 and KD and Klay is that even though KD has had some injury history of having bad injuries that kept him out, neither KD nor Klay has ever asked for load management. They've never had nicks and knacks, just where, they just need a little time off, especially Klay Thompson. I mean, you're betting on the ultimate warrior here, and I'm talking about lowercase w in warrior. And so nobody has any qualm about giving Klay a max, because he's going to play his tail off for you. He's going to play with minor injuries. So will KD. He can't play with major injuries, obviously, in his past, but neither has a history of load management issues. So now let me just step back from this and put it in perspective for everyone. This guy, number 2, has become the luckiest player to me in the history of the NBA, because not only did he hit the luckiest shot in the history of the playoffs to beat a Philly team in Game 7 at the buzzer that wouldn't have gotten to the buzzer if Embiid had not been sick and hurt all through that series. Philly was the better team. And then what happens in the finals? KD comes back right on cue and is starting to take over Game 5, and it looks like he's going to take over the series, and he ruptures his Achilles. And then Klay in Game 6, he has taken over Game 6, and it appears he's taken over the finals, and at the end of the third quarter, he wrecks his knee. So now 2 major dominoes are off the table going into free agency, where not that they won't merit their max contracts, but they're out of the way, which means that number 2 suddenly becomes the biggest prize in all of free agency. And it's mind-boggling to me, because now everybody is crawling for number 2. They're willing to give number 2 whatever he wants. However many games. He could play half the year next year. If that was part of his deal that he made with anybody, with Toronto, Clippers, Nets, Knicks, whoever it is, even Lakers, if he said, I'll play 41 games for you next year, they'd all give him whatever he wanted. But you just know it, because KD's out of sight and a little bit out of mind right now. Not that he won't get his money, but you have to shelve him for a whole year, and maybe Klay for much of this year. So all of a sudden, I'm back. I'm going to say it one last time, because I just can't get it out of my system. This is why crime has paid, because he quit his way out of San Antonio, and he winds up getting every break he could ever get in Toronto. And it continues to drive me a little crazy, because it's just not fair. He won the MVP, to me, by default of the finals, because in games 2, 5, and 6, nobody wants to hear this, But he failed miserably to close all 3 of those games. And I don't have time to go through the detail, but he just flat out, he couldn't do it. Van Vliet could do it, but he couldn't.
First of all, Skip Bayless, I'm tired of you talking about fair. Fair is a place where you go and you judge livestock, you can ride the merry-go-round, and you buy candied apples. That's what the fair is. Second of all, he earned that. First, let's look at this. There are really 2 guys that are out there on the free agent market that you believe they can swing the pendulum of power in your favor. One will not play all basketball season next year. That's Kevin Durant. The other guy that you believe that can swing the pendulum of power because he's done it is Kawhi Leonard.
Thank you for watching. You can subscribe here to get the latest from the show, and be sure to check out more of the best clips from Undisputed, or go watch a few other segments from our other shows on FS1.